Tell them about your cross-dressing thing.
I don't want to let too many people know about that.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, a production of flagandbanner.com. Through storytelling and conversational interviews, this weekly radio show and podcast offers listeners an insider's view into starting and running a business, the ups and downs of risk-taking, and the commonalities of successful people. Connect with Kerry through her candid, often funny, and always informative weekly blog. There, you'll read, learn, and make comment about her life as a 21st century wife, mother, daughter, and entrepreneur. And now it's time for Kerry to get all up in your business.
Thank you, Sun Gray. If right now you're sitting at your computer, you might want to watch the show live on Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy's Facebook page. But if you miss it, no worries. A YouTube video will be made available next week. This show began as a calling. After 4 decades of running a small business called flagandbanner.com, a.k.a. Arkansas Flag and Banner, I felt I had something to share. I wanted to create a platform for not just me, but other business owners and successful people to pay forward their experiential knowledge in a conversational way. Originally, my team and I thought it would be this easy, informative, 1-hour-a-week interview, and boy, were we wrong. As with every new endeavor, it's harder than you first think. And once again, I find myself at the onset of starting and running yet another new business, this podcast, and doing exactly what the show's about. Taking risks, embracing change, and working hard. After interviewing over 150 successful people, I've noticed some reoccurring traits among many of my guests. Belief in a higher power, the heart of a teacher, and creativity, because business is creative. Before we start, I want to let you know if you miss any part of today's show or want to hear it again or share it, there's a way, and Gray will tell you how.
Listen to all UIYB past and present interviews by going to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy's YouTube channel, the Democrat Gazette's digital newspaper, flagandbanner.com's website, or subscribe to our podcast wherever you like to listen by searching Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy. And if you would like to receive timely email notifications of each week's upcoming guests, go to flagandbanner.com, click Radio Show, and join the email list. Back to you, Kerry.
Thank you. If you've lived in Little Rock over the past 10 or so years, then chances are you've heard of my guests, the two Jewish guys, Phil Kaplan and Leslie Singer. Though the two men have a lot in common, they haven't always known each other. Leslie Singer, an ad man and once VP for Fairfield Communities near Heber Springs, Arkansas, and Phil Kaplan, a civil rights attorney in private practice, first meeting was as volunteers at an on-air fundraiser for KUAR radio station. They became fast friends, finding out they both were born in the Northeast, both moved to Little Rock in the 1970s, and both grew up in the Jewish culture. On air, their commonalities and dry humor, coupled with listeners' curiosity, made for great storytelling and Jewish shtick. So much so that their popularity grew, and the Christmas charity event called the Two Jewish Guys Hanukkah Show, a Little Rock Christmas tradition, was born. But Leslie Singer and Phil Kaplan are more than their stage names suggest. Along with being the endearing two Jewish guys, they are a combination of savvy businessmen, authors, musicians, activists, and more. It is a pleasure to welcome to the table the smart and fun-loving two Jewish guys, ad man Leslie Singer and attorney Phil Kaplan.
Hello, Kerry.
Glad to be here.
Hey, wake up, Phil. I know I'm messing you up over there.
No, I'm quite happy to be here, but I'm not an author.
No, but
That's me.
That's he.
I know that.
She combined.
She's got 2 books.
No, not me.
No, he's got.
He's got 2 books.
Yeah,
That makes me the author. You're the civil rights guy.
I haven't done that in years.
You're the big shot attorney.
I am the big shot attorney. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So how?
Well, that gets us going.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in here. Talk about how happenstance first meeting at KUAR's fundraiser. Who wants to set the scene for that?
Well, there's a Yiddish word, bashert. It's faded. Bashert. Can you say bashert?
Beshert.
Bashert. Yes.
Beshert.
It's faded. Well, we were obviously faded. See, I had an office on what was then the Main Street Mall. And I'd go out and maybe get a little lunch. And Leslie was an inveterate walker. He was walking.
I was always walking.
He was always walking. And he was walking on the Main Street Mall. And I'd see him on the Main Street Mall, and he was there with Don Evans, a now retired architect, who is not very funny, actually. So I'm sorry I even mentioned his name. At any
He
rate,
makes me laugh.
so I saw Leslie and this other fella, and we would chit chat occasionally. And then one day, I had been doing the fundraiser with somebody else whose name I now can't recall, and they inserted Leslie. They didn't think I could handle it by myself, so they inserted Leslie into this cramped little room, and it was magic. It was Bashert.
But let me tell you the little more detail about it. So we're in the room. It's the fundraiser, twice a year.
For KUAR.
For KUAR Public Radio. And they do that all week. And so every day of the week, they have several other hosts doing the same thing. Those guys basically, or women, they'd come in and they'd basically beg for money. And it was kind of boring, And
It wasn't boring, kind of. It was exceedingly.
It was kind of exceedingly boring.
Yeah.
And we said, let's not do that. Why don't we just do this? This was all in the spur of the moment. Why don't we just do a show? Like you're a little kid. Hey, let's do a show. So we said, okay, let's do a show about being Jewish. And we'll just call it The Two Jewish Guys. And we will just ad-lib our way through it. And we'll talk about what it's like being Jewish and our Jewish backgrounds and a Jewish culture and Jewish jokes, blah, blah, blah. And we did that. And it was pretty big. I mean, people really liked it. A lot of people called in. And, the deal was, if you had done this in New York, nobody would have cared. But it's not that common, to have two guys talking about being Jewish or Judaism.
We're aberrations.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
It was lighthearted, and we were making fun of ourselves, and we were making fun of everything. And so it clicked. So they asked us to come back, and at one point, they said, how about you guys do a live show? And this was not at the Clinton Center yet. This was like at one of the buildings at UALR.
It was at the Extension Center.
Yeah. So
you know
we
what
did
the
it in front of
Extension
a live
Center is?
audience. Yeah.
Extension Center is where the people who need farming help or gardening help, that kind of thing. It was alien to me.
Well, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with the fact that it was a little auditorium. So we went up there live, and we did this thing in front of like 75 people.
No, 10.
Really?
10 people.
It seemed
10 people.
I guess it was a small room. It seemed more crowded to me. So we did it, and everybody loved it. And we had our mothers on. My mother was in the audience. I think your mother was in the audience.
No, my mother was by phone, I think, at that
anyway,
point.
it still caught on, and it was a lot of fun. Finally, the station just said, let's keep doing this. Then they moved us over to the Clinton Center.
Didn't we do it at the Dara Library?
Yeah, we did it. The next year was at the Dara Library.
Right.
We never got to Verizon. This has been a sad story.
It has. I regret
Not even Robinson Auditorium.
I regret. Well, we were at Robinson Auditorium.
We appeared with the symphony as one of their holiday acts. The Two Jewish Guys, a Little Rock Christmas tradition, like you said. So we'd go up and we'd do a little shtick. And that was written, of course.
That's what I was going to say. Are you still ad-libbing, or are you?
No. And the Christmas show was not ad-lib. The Hanukkah show, rather, was... We had
Scripted.
acts, was scripted. We had music acts. We had our thing kind of worked out. It was not really scripted, but loose like this.
Well, we would get together and we said, all right, we got 60 minutes. How are we going to divide the 60 minutes? So he's better at math than I am. So he took a little piece of paper on a clipboard and he said, okay, 2 minutes, introduction, 2 minutes.
That was very professional.
Yeah.
Very professional.
Then we said, the blessings on the candles, on the Hanukkah candles. 3 minutes.
So anyway, that's how the show started.
Whatever.
And we did it for like 5 or 6 or 7 years.
Oh, yeah.
And then we decided we're not going to do it anymore, just because A, it was a lot of work. B, we wanted to go out on top.
Oh.
Yeah. But frankly, we are thinking, and this is an exclusive to you, Kerry.
Okay.
We're thinking about reprising it. Like maybe we'll do one more. I call it like the reunion tour, the One City Jewish Guy reunion tour. I'm not promising.
Let's do it in the Dreamland Ballroom.
It's got to be at the Clinton Center. How many people does the Dreamland
Same
Ball?
amount.
300, 400 people.
400.
Really?
And you could do a fundraiser for the Dreamland Ballroom.
Oh, that
Well-
sounds like a quid pro quo.
Yes, it does.
It also
Well, anyway, we'll talk about it.
It also
we don't
sounds-
know. We don't know that we're going to do it.
sounds like pressure.
Yeah, we don't know
does.
that we're
We
going to do
don't-
it. But
we don't
that's
do well
that's
with
how
pressure.
that's how we do it. And I always say this. I always say, Phil, who really is a major force in this town, he won't agree. Well, he'll agree
No,
quietly.
I don't agree.
You don't agree. But Phil has a great reputation. An outstanding lawyer, has done a lot of great work for the city, for the civil rights, everything. And, is a Harvard graduate and all this kind of thing. And this is what he's known for, being one of the two Jewish guys. I think that's sad.
Oh.
I think it's my crowning achievement.
Well, we're going to talk about your crowning achievements
Okay.
because they are many. But before we move on to each of y'all's crowning achievements, because you both had a great career before you became the two Jewish guys, and the reason that that's so popular is because it can go viral, and you're speaking to, and it's humorous. And I mean, people just love that. You make people laugh; they love you.
Not everybody loves
I
this.
never dated a guy that didn't make me laugh.
You'd never dated a guy that what?
Didn't make me laugh.
Yeah, that's important.
It's very
But
important.
there are some Jewish people in this town who don't like what we do. That's interesting because
Well,
they think we stereotype it too much.
Well, you said this, Leslie. Interesting enough, at least 2/3 of our audience are not Jewish. You went on to say that really inspires me that they are interested in the religious and cultural part of Judaism. They enjoy a peek into another culture, and they like it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I
You
do
said
feel
that.
that way. And I think, that's not why we do it necessarily, but I think we have found a lot of people who really like it and like learning about what Judaism is and what it means and what it's kind of, not at the highest religious levels, culturally mostly. But there are some of people in our community, in our faith community, that say, you guys are you're feeding into the stereotypes. Because we would make comments about, buying wholesale and this kind of thing. But frankly, that's what Jewish humor is.
Self-deprecatory.
Self-deprecation.
You're kind of ahead of your time. There's a
Oh,
popular
always.
Netflix. Always.
Always ahead.
Oh, so proud to be ahead of my
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
There's a Netflix series now. I can't remember the name of it, of two Jewish guys that did really well, a comedy act. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
I should
Well,
have
the
written it
Kaminsky
down.
method is clearly two guys,
Yeah.
two Jewish guys.
That,
One is an actor and the other is an agent. And they are stereotypically Jewish too.
Yeah.
You can. It's not hard to tell.
This is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with and learn more about the two Jewish guys, Leslie Singer and Phil Kaplan. We won't ask them if they're planning a comeback because we've already found out they are kind of thinking about going back to the Clinton Center.
Possibly.
And we will find out about their careers because they both had great careers. We'll be back after the break.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, a production of flagandbanner.com. Over 40 years ago, with only $400, Kerry founded Arkansas Flag and Banner. During the last 4 decades, the business has grown and changed. Over this time, Kerry's business and leadership knowledge grew. As early as 2004, she began sharing her knowledge in her weekly blog. In 2009, she founded the nonprofit Friends of Dreamland Ballroom, and in 2014, Brave Magazine, a biannual publication. Today, she has branched out into this very radio show, YouTube channel, and podcast. Each week, you'll hear candid conversations between her and her guests about real-world experiences on a variety of businesses and topics that we hope you'll find interesting, inspiring, and educational. Stay up to date by going to flagandbanner.com and joining our email list. You'll receive our popular Water Cooler Weekly email that notifies you of upcoming guests, happenings at Dreamland Ballroom, sales at flagandbanner.com, access to Brave magazine articles, and Kerry's current blog post. All that in one weekly email. Telling American-made stories, selling American-made flags. TheFlagandBanner.com. Back to you, Kerry.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and I'm speaking today with the smart and witty two Jewish guys, Leslie Singer, ad man, and Phil Kaplan, civil rights attorney extraordinaire. Before the break, we talked about how the two Jewish guys came to fruition, how it started. How long ago was that? 10 years ago?
More, maybe.
Oh, yes.
15, almost.
Probably. At least 15
close,
years
close
ago.
to 20 years ago.
And their rise to stardom that they didn't know was going to happen, that probably people in New York City would just love. And then...
and yet we still try to be just your average person. You know?
I know.
We're so successful at that.
Yeah. That's
We're
right.
average.
Yeah.
Can't say too much more than that.
Phil, you grew up in Michigan, graduated from Harvard
No,
Law.
no, I didn't grow up in Michigan.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Massachusetts. Well, it's an M, close enough.
It's close.
You know, I checked that like 3 times. That's my dyslexia coming out. I wrote over here, yep, right there's Massachusetts and another place. All right, Phil, you grew up in Massachusetts, graduated from Harvard Law, and practiced as a field attorney for the National Labor Relations Board. Was it in St. Louis or Massachusetts? And kind of tell us about that journey.
I went to Harvard College and went to the University of Michigan Law School.
Oh, Lord. All right, get it all straight for me.
And then I worked for the National Labor Relations Board in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So.
How'd you go there? How'd you go from Massachusetts to St. Louis?
You know, it was something called a job.
Just following the job.
Following a job, yes. Thought I ought to use that law degree in something that my parents helped pay for. And when you apply for a government position, you go where they tell you to go. And there was an opening in St. Louis. Turned out to be a really wonderful experience. We loved St. Louis. And
who's we? Were you married at the time?
My wife.
You were married?
And yes, I was married halfway through law school, halfway through my second year of law school, and I sent her to work. Well, needed something.
Yeah. Somebody's got it.
So she was an elementary school teacher for a while. She's now a retired social worker. But at that point, we lived in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor was a wonderful town. Couldn't make a living there, but it was a wonderful town. And St. Louis was wonderful, and wonderful experience also. Worked, learning a lot about employment and labor law. And I got an offer to come to work for a firm here that was then known as McMath, Leatherman, Woods, and Youngdahl, now the McMath firm, Governor McMath, and then Judge Henry Woods, and a man named Leland Leatherman, and Jim Youngdahl, who handled the employment work at that firm. And I left after about 15 months, something like that, and became associated with John Walker in what later became Walker, Kaplan, and Mays.
John Walker that just passed away?
On Monday, yes.
How'd that affect you?
I'm sorry?
How did that affect you?
Well, if we have not been close for several years because that partnership ended almost 40 years ago. But nonetheless, we still had associations. We were on opposite sides of a couple of big cases. But I still respected John greatly, and his death is a significant loss for the state. Significant.
You, how did you were affected by the Central High crisis?
No, I came after. I was in college during the Central High business, and there was a man at Kirkland House where I was who was from Little Rock, and he took a considerable amount of ribbing as a result of the closure of and sending troops in, all of the whole terrible business. But soon after I joined John, actually before I joined John, there was a trial about busing in Little Rock before Judge the late Gordon Young, and I represented a bunch of white parents who were proposing that busing be the alternative to desegregate the schools. At that point, the only desegregation was freedom of choice, and that resulted in almost no desegregation at all. So, I mean, it's a long history and a long story.
You were on several big cases, and I want to come back to them. But let's jump over to Leslie now. So, Leslie, before you came to live in Arkansas, you were a successful drummer. Tell us about your career. It was pretty successful. What was the name of your band?
Well, I was in several bands as I was growing up, starting in like maybe junior high school and through high school. But the two bands that sort of took me to places that were the most unusual was a group called the Unloved, which was a soul band. This is prior to the bigger band.
Unloved.
The Unloved, LUV apostrophe D, as was the fashion back there in the, you know. And this
60s.
was a soul band, and it was a very good band. We really thought we were going to make it. We had a big manager and a big musical attorney in New York named Warren Trube, and we had a secret under the table partner, which is, you know, remember payola and all that kind of thing. This wasn't payola, but there was a guy in New York named Scott Muni, who was a major radio DJ, and FM had just started. That's how old this is. And Scott Muni was a secret partner with our manager, Paul Mineo, and we had these two women who wrote songs for us, both of whom had hit records, like with Wilson Pickett and other people, and this was going to be it.
Yeah.
And we just knew it, and it wasn't. It just never happened, you know. We played a lot of great clubs. We actually opened once at a Miss New York State contest. We opened for James Brown, if you can believe that. And
wow,
this
so
was
impressed.
this was a good band. We played at the Peppermint Lounge and, you know, all that good kind of cool stuff. But we never made it big. But it was almost beside the point, because it's the late 60s. You're in New York. You're in the rock and roll business. You know, it wasn't going to get much better than that for kids our age. Left that band. I was sort of recruited to another band called the Unspoken Word, which went to school up at Brown University and Rhode Island School of Design up near where you were. They were like they had a woman lead singer, Dee Dee. Her name was Dee Dee, and they were more like psych rock, you know, not psychedelic, but quietly, you know, ethereal, and they were really good. So we got a great recording contract with them with Atco, which is in Atlantic Records, and we did this first album, which was a concept album called Tuesday, April 19th.
And, you know, people don't know what concept album
Well, concept album means that there was like a story behind it. It wasn't just, you know, 14 songs or something. It was some kind of there was more to it. There was a story. Frankly, there really wasn't. We were trying to make more out of it than it really was.
What was the name of the album?
It was called Tuesday, April 19th, which was meant to be just a day in the life of this person. I never really understood.
Because it's a story.
Because it's a story. Now, it doesn't really read like a story of anybody's day. It frankly doesn't. But this was the 60s, man. You could just say anything and do anything.
And Bob Dylan was writing all these ballads.
Yeah, and these long things. And then that was well received. But then that wasn't really us.
Received by whom?
By local. It was on the radio.
Yeah.
You know, and it got good reviews. You know,
As
by
my
different
mother
music.
would say, never heard of it.
Never heard. Well, most people never heard of it. No, most people didn't. But those who did liked it. So then we did our.
How do you say never heard of it in Yiddish?
No.
How do you say that?
Ik heb niet gehoord van das.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nicht gehört von das. Yeah.
Oh, say that, Gray, son Gray.
So we did it was a fancy album. It had a big orchestra and everything, because we said this might be the only album we do. Let's make it significant.
Strings.
But it really wasn't us.
Strings you had.
Yeah, big orchestra, strings and everything, yeah.
Brass.
every instrument, Phil, literally every instrument, timpani, everything.
Timpani?
So, timpani even.
Did you have the little triangle?
We had the triangles, we had cymbals, we had the tuba.
Did you have a gong?
We had an oboe, we had a gong.
No, you did not.
I don't think we had a gong, but we could have had a gong if there was a gong part. Anyway, we did that, and so it didn't really. So, but really, we were really not that kind of a band. We were a really kind of a hard-driving blues band. And so our next album, just simply called The Unspoken Word, was that.
It did better?
It did better. And a matter of fact, it got reviewed in Rolling Stone magazine and got a great review in Rolling Stone magazine. I mean, they really liked it. And so we toured around with that, but still never really made it into the...
So tell the listeners what that day also happened on that day. So you just picked this day randomly, Tuesday.
Oh, you're talking about Tuesday, April 19th.
He told me this right before we went on the air. I was like, this is freaking me out.
I've tried to create this... I haven't really tried. I thought about trying to create this buzz about this album, which is available, by the way, like on eBay and Spot. You can hear it in different places.
Tuesday, April
19th.
By the Unspoken
Word, which was just a random date that I actually came up with just off the top of my head. But what happened was, Tuesday, April 19th, several years later, was the Waco massacre. Remember when Waco, when that whole
Koresh
and that communal group got, and then a couple of years later was the Oklahoma City bombing.
I cannot believe those were on the same 2 days.
Well, I think they were related to each other. I think the Oklahoma City bombing was in as a result of the Waco thing. In other words, somebody was saying, I'm going to celebrate,
Celebrating.
Yeah, celebrate it. So I've tried to create this, I've fantasized about creating an artificial buzz about how if you listen to the Unspoken Word Tuesday, April 19th album, there's all these hints that some big stuff was coming down.
Would that be fake buzz?
That's fake buzz, we call that. So, but it wasn't. I mean, it's because you can project anything into anything. So,
Dave said, I keep calling you Dave because of Dave Kaplan.
Okay.
Because Dave started the Dave Kaplan. Phil said it's because you have to play the album backwards.
Yeah, no, have to. But literally, these 2 albums are still, they're on, I think you can get them on Amazon, or I know somebody re-released them as CDs.
I'm going to go listen.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They hold up.
You miss playing the drums?
Yes, a little.
You don't play it all anymore?
Not much. Every once in a while I sit in.
How's your hearing?
My hearing's great. I don't have any problem. Yeah,
really.
No, I don't have any hearing problems. But I've lost some of my drumming chops. You know what I mean? It's like not speaking a language. If you don't speak it for a long time, you sort of lose it. But I think I could get it back. But I don't really want to. I'm into other things these days. Don't ask me what I'm into.
Eating.
He's you can tell by looking at him and he's walking down the street. He's got rhythm.
Oh yeah,
And
he's
got swagger.
Because his hands are going in a different way than his feet. And his head's going one way and his hands are going another way.
You call that swagger?
And that's what a drummer has to do. A drummer has to have the
independent.
ability to have one rhythm going in one hand and different on the other hand and something on his foot.
They have names for that. Like it's called bass drum independence. Like your foot,
really?
Your right foot has to do. But you have to practice. It's not like you can just do it. You have to practice like being accurate. So anyway, all in all, a very, very fun musical career, which basically determined the whole pathway of my life. Because the band got me to Arkansas. The band.
How did it do that?
Well, we were getting ready to write the second album, and a friend of mine in New York had met a communal group that was living in Arkansas.
Very popular at the time.
Yes. And he said, why don't you guys come down to Arkansas and live with us for a month or so and write your album down there? And that just sounded like the coolest thing ever. So we did. And we came down and we wrote the album, and then we went back to New York. But
so you went back to New York?
I went back to New York, but then came back down to Arkansas.
Because you fell in love or something?
Because I liked it here.
Oh, you just liked it here. You said when you went back to New York, you sold shoes.
Yes, that's great. So here I am, Mr. Big Shot musician, at the top of my musical career. I go back to New York. I had already not only been a musician, but I had gone into advertising, sort of got hired at an ad agency. When I left this communal group after about 3 years, I got a job with an ad agency. And the woman I was married to at the time, she was from New York also, and we thought we missed it. So we moved back to New York. Well, I couldn't get a job in New York in advertising. No way, because here I am from Little Rock, you know, and it was the recession, and the only job I could get was selling women's shoes in Bergdorf Goodman, which is a high-end Fifth Avenue, you know. But I was terrible shoe salesman. I was terrible. And but I did sell shoes to Greta Garbo. That's the highlight of my life. Yeah, absolutely. Size 9 Papagallo flat.
And I never knew that,
forget it.
Leslie. You didn't tell me.
Well, you don't know everything, Phil. You don't know everything.
Well,
I got secrets.
now everybody else knows.
Everybody knows. So I stayed there 9 months, and I wrote to my boss here in Little Rock, and I said, "Could I have my job back?" He said, "Absolutely. Come on back. I'll give you a raise. We'll give you this. We'll give you that." And so I came back, and I've been here now like 45 years.
Wow.
And I love it here.
Top that, Phil Kaplan.
Yeah, Phil Kaplan. Who'd you sell shoes to, Mr. Harvard?
I can't.
Mr. Harvard University.
But
Mr. Harvard
I will
College.
say this.
College.
You know, my father was a kosher butcher, so I worked in the butcher shop. I never cut a piece of meat.
I was
my
going to say,
brother
you got
did
your
that.
fingers.
What'd you do?
I cleaned. I was a cleaner. You had to be clean, right? In a butcher shop.
Sure.
Charming.
And so then they made kosher delicacies like knishes and kreplach and kishke. You know kishke?
No.
You don't know kishke?
Kishka. Sausage.
Kishke is called,
Sausage?
in English, it's called stuffed derma.
That's skin? Derma?
Well, it's intestine.
It's a sausage.
Yes, it's like a sausage, yes. And
Only
so,
worse.
Yes, only.
You still eat that?
And do you eat it?
Do
Yeah,
you
eat
still
it.
eat that? Do you
Yeah,
still
you
eat
cook it and you eat it. And it's
Delicious.
But it's about the worst thing you can have for a heart condition. You know, it is, and I think maybe I had a stent put in about a year ago. I think it caught up
From
with
the
me.
kishke.
From the kishke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's called the Kishke stent.
But knishes, you know knishes? You don't even know knishes.
I don't.
This is,
Sad.
we have to educate you.
Well, this
from-
is what the two Jewish guys in the Christmas show or the Hanukkah show would talk about. We talk about knishes and the foods we ate. You know what I used to eat? I used to eat, well, maybe this is, tell me if this is a certain thing, boiled chicken's feet. Did you ever eat that?
No, but I know.
You know people that do.
Yeah. That's a Southern thing, I think.
Yeah,
Or,
well,
or an Asian thing. I think they eat that a lot in Asia.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that was one of the things.
How about this one? Bissell.
Bissell? Yeah, it means a little.
So you could eat a little. You
Little
could eat a
kishka.
Bissell,
Bissell
Bissell
kishka.
kishka.
Yeah. A bissel kishke
I
is about
speak
all
Yiddish.
that you want to eat.
I speak Yiddish now.
You speak Yiddish.
You don't want to take too much more. You know.
All right, let's
So-
take a break. Oh, you got something else to say?
No.
Come on.
No.
Come on, bring
Well,
it, Phil.
No, I'm fine.
Tell them about your cross-dressing thing.
I don't want to let too many people know about that.
Okay, we'll take a break then.
No, tell
we
me.
won't.
No, we won't. Tell me.
Cross-dressing?
Yeah.
No. That's Leslie.
That's not Leslie. That's a
It's not
joke.
Leslie.
It's a little
That's just-
joke. It's a little
That's
joke.
just a joke.
It's a Bissell joke.
That's a Bissell joke.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with the retired but still very interesting and funny KUAR's two Jewish guys, Leslie Singer and Phil Kaplan. And I think they're planning a comeback, so stay tuned. When we come back also, we'll give you a phone number if you want to call in. I want to remind everyone we're broadcasting live every Wednesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time on 101.1 The Answer and Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy's Facebook page. And that after each show's airing, a podcast is made available on all popular listening sites and YouTube. Phone number when we come back.
Flag and banner.
I love the name of the show, Up in Your Business. That is so Kerry McCoy.
Isn't it, though?
Isn't it? Hang on. Up in Your Business.
So what are people listening to now?
You.
No.
You. Oh, what's here? Right here. Oh, put your phone up. You can hear. There's a commercial running.
See, I hear better actually without this.
You hear good. I don't hear this good.
He might have.
You have a nice radio voice.
Doesn't he though?
The guy here told me I sounded a little too public radio, but it was okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know that's not. You don't want to be too public.
Thank you, though. I appreciate that.
Although
Is that-
our
is that a
public radio
compliment?
could use that voice.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and we're just laughing it up back here. I'm speaking today with the smart, witty, two Jewish guys, Leslie Singer, ad man, and Phil Kaplan, civil rights attorney. If you have a question you would like to ask them, you may call
501-823-0965.
again.
The number is 501-823-0965.
So before the break, we talked about Phil cross-dressing, then we talked about Leslie cross-dressing, and then we found out that they really don't cross-dress.
And not that there's
Not in
anything wrong
public.
with that.
Not in public,
Not
anyway.
no, in the privacy of one's home.
There you
and
go.
there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to
Absolutely.
besmirch cross-dressers.
That's right. You're right. You're right. So let's go back to Phil. You came to Little Rock. You were on some. You had some huge
Well, the first big case
cases.
was
3 big cases.
but the first one was I got a call from Judge J. Smith Henley, who was one of, at that time, only 2 federal judges in Little Rock. He had 2 prior prison cases, one involving the strap and one involving the Tucker telephone. The Tucker telephone. Do you know what that was?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Well, that was a method of punishment, more torture. It involved
The Tucker telephone?
attaching
Electrodes.
electrodes to one's genitalia.
Oh no!
Well, yes, that's what.
That's a real story.
That is a true story.
What year was this?
Well, it was 1964 or 5.
Oh, we've come a long way, baby.
Maybe.
So at any rate, but he had lots of petitions, prisoner petitions, stacked up, and he wanted to do something about it. So he called me, and he called Jack Holt Jr. And Jack Holt Jr. Was a pretty well-known criminal defense lawyer. You know, Jack then became the Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court. So at any rate, he called us. He said he wanted somebody with some civil rights experience, and he wanted somebody who was a real lawyer. And Jack was the real lawyer who understood that these prisoners were a particular group that he said I might not be familiar with. At any rate, so we embarked on a trial. We went down to the prison. At that time, the Arkansas legislature appropriated $0 for the Arkansas penitentiary system. It was all self-supporting. There were no prison guards that carried guns. Only inmates carried guns. And you seem surprised.
I am surprised.
Really? Well,
It's not everybody.
that's
What do you mean
that's what-
inmates? You mean inmates were acting as guards?
Inmates
If you
had
were a good
rifles,
guard, you got
and
to.
they manned the guard towers.
The inmates did.
Yeah, and they had rifles. And
Why didn't they just shoot everybody and leave?
Well, they would shoot if you tried to leave. They would shoot you.
Oh,
Yeah,
target practice.
yeah. Well, I don't know. You're not supposed to leave, so
Yeah.
that was their directive.
Those were some good inmates that they didn't just get up and leave.
And so it was a dark and dreadful place. And after a couple of trials, or several sessions actually, most of the sessions were about a week long, when we would call these prisoners up from not Tucker at that time, it was Varner from Cummins Prison Farm, and the judge declared the whole prison system unconstitutional. So Jack and I then, in follow-up litigation, we spent more time in prison than most inmates. Most inmates, were there 3 or 4 years. Jack and I were there 10 years or so.
Interviewing people?
I'm sorry?
Interviewing people?
Oh, well, with that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we interviewed people. Then we finally were able to get some young lawyers, law students, to help us with the interviewing.
So it took 10 years?
I'll tell you, the case never really got settled until Bill Clinton became the Attorney General. And he said, we've got to put an end to this terrible litigation. We're going to settle it. And he did.
Was it a good outcome, I guess?
It was a good outcome, except that prisons are always, well, they are, I guess, the most unmanageable of societal institutions. They're just not prone to the same kind of systemic solutions that...
And they're not sexy to work on. I mean, who wants to work on those? Who wants to go, okay, I'm working on solving the prison system, but they need to. I mean, it's not...
Well, there are people who are hard at work at it, but it requires a very special, dedicated kind of person. At any rate, one of the funny things was that when... although Dale Bumpers was a great governor, he hired to run the prisons, he hired a couple of people from Texas, which had a prison system worse than ours, if that's possible. The prison systems in the South that had prison farms, Parchman in Louisiana, Mississippi had a prison farm system, and they were terrible, these people who came up from Texas. They were awful. But Clinton put an end to that and decided he would prepare a settlement, and
he did.
We settled it.
You had two other ones. You argued against the teaching of creation in the Arkansas public schools. I mean, both of those are big policy changers. And then you had another one I think our listeners might be interested in. It's the one where you were the lead counsel for the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville and the Board of Trustees in a lawsuit, Richardson,
right,
Nolan Richardson versus Sugg in 2006.
Right. Well, that was when the university fired Nolan Richardson, who was the head basketball coach at the time.
And beloved by the state of Arkansas.
Well...
Except for at that time, people were kind of mad at him.
Except by that time, he was losing. So you're always loved when you're a winner. Mm-hmm. You ain't so much loved when you're a loser.
So he said some disparaging remark, didn't he?
He did.
What was it? Or can you repeat it?
Well,
I don't even remember.
It had to do with recruiting. And, now he's back in the good graces, and they've named the court after him. John Walker, the late John Walker, represented Nolan, and I represented the university.
And you won.
We won.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Phil always wins.
I don't always win.
You win all the time.
If a lawyer tells you that they win all their cases, he either doesn't handle any cases or he's lying, because you can't win every case. It's just not possible. But I did win that case, and we won the creation science case too.
You win the big cases.
I won the big ones.
The policy changers. I mean, those are some big policy changes.
What
were y'all's family life like? Were they the similar? But were y'all's families growing up similar?
I think somewhat similar.
Yeah. Family life as growing up, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had a brother who's deceased now, my late brother. My parents were immigrants. They came to this country. Both of them came right after the First World War. And their fathers, both my mother's father and my father's father, came right before the war. And then the war broke out, and they were unable to leave. And they came from, my father from what is now Lithuania, but was then probably Poland or Russia. The lines changed. My mother from, she had family in Latvia and Russia.
What language did they speak in the house?
Well, they quickly spoke English, but they spoke Yiddish.
That's why you know so many words.
They spoke Yiddish in the house, and my father's parents spoke Yiddish their whole life. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had a little a store where she sold women's hosiery and corsets and other women's undergarments. So she spoke English. She had to.
What's the word for undergarments?
I have no idea.
Yes, you do.
Oh,
I
yes,
have it
you
written
do.
here. I have it written here somewhere.
Oh.
Come on.
Let me see.
Underspoken.
No, unter something. Under is unter. Unterkleider.
Here. Untersocken. Under things. Pull up your breeches. Your Untersocken are showing.
Yeah, they're showing.
Well,
Am I saying it right?
Close.
well, probably.
That's what it looks like.
Because it's not a word that I commonly
I'm
use.
surprised you don't. Your grandmother didn't use it
Yeah, we're
all
going
the
back
time.
to that
Well,
whole cross-dressing
my father
thing
used to
again
say-
with the corsets.
Oh,
My
you
father
said
used
don't
to
make.
say,
Oh, see, you're right.
use Gatkes. Gatkes.
What's that
I think Gatkes were...
Oh, yeah, Gutkes.
Yeah,
What's
Gatkes,
that
I
mean?
think,
Underwear.
were underwear. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, let me tell you about, let me just interject, because I have a story that relates to that. And you're talking about, first of all, you were talking about St. Louis, and then you were talking about where your parents came from. My father was born in St. Louis and moved to Poland.
That's backwards.
How Polish is that?
You mean stupid?
Well,
Did you mean stupid?
Well, I don't want to say that, but
What
it was
does that
actually
mean?
brilliant. It was actually brilliant. His parents, who were from Poland, came to this country. His mother gave birth to him in this country. They came here legally, gave birth to him in this country. So now he's a citizen. Took him back to Poland, where he was raised till he was about 18 years old, and then he was allowed to bring them back as
that
a
was
citizen.
brilliant.
So
That
and,
was.
and my parents, my grandparents on my dad's side were in the tailor business, tailoring, and they their name wasn't Singer, their name was Platz, Platz, which is a pretty common Polish name, but not a very nice sounding American name. But everywhere in their store was Singer sewing machine equipment. The calendar said Singer, and the equipment said Singer, and this said.
Because they thought they were related.
They just said this has got to be a great American name. We're going to change our name to Singer. So I'm actually named after the sewing machine.
What was their original name? Did you?
Platz.
Platz.
Platz. Platz.
Yeah, and Platz is a Yiddish word, too. It
means fall down.
To,
right?
Well, to die. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he platzed.
Yeah, you can platzen von das. You could die from this.
Well, yeah, you could die from Yakut Platz. So, and then my other side of the family came from Russia, Ukraine, actually now, and they were in the hand laundry business. So we came from, pretty modest stock. My father was a house painter, and my mother just...
Nobody in your family played drums or music?
Nobody.
You just got it? You just got it?
I just got... Well, I'll tell you the story real quickly. I've told this story before because I think it's fascinating. I can trace my life up to this very minute sitting here with you from the day at just prior to my 5th birthday in Cleveland, Ohio, where we lived for a couple years, going to a department store with my mom and seeing a toy set of drums, up on a shelf and saying, "Ooh, I want that." And the next thing, a couple of weeks later, a big old box comes to the apartment and it says, "Do not open until November 19th, which was my birthday. And inside was this little toy set of drums. So, of course, I loved them, and I would just knock around on them. I didn't know how to really play them, but I loved them. Comes the third, now we're in New York on Long Island. Comes the 3rd grade. Who wants to be in the band? I raise my hand. I say, well, I know how to play the drums, and so I'll be in the band. Well, like I mentioned earlier, playing the drums has taken me throughout my whole life. It got me through, I earned my living through college that way. I made all my friends that way. I met all my wives that way, and literally, and moved to Arkansas because of that. And here I am, 76 years later, or 70 years, because it was my 5th birthday, because of that one day, coming across a drum set.
You never know.
You don't know. I could have not gone, with my mother that day, and I might still be selling shoes in Bergdorf Goodman.
You're also an author. You have a really weird hobby, Leslie.
I'm not.
In fact, I brought the book.
I am an author in the sense that I have 2 books published, but I don't consider myself an author. Although I am a writer in the sense of being a copywriter.
You are a copywriter. That's what you did as an ad
advertising
man.
Right.
Did you ever write a book, Phil? You should.
Never.
You
No.
should.
My kids and my wife want me to write a book about my life.
You should.
I'm hesitant to do it. For one
You could
thing,
just dictate it.
well, I'm not a great writer. I'd
So
have to have
dictate it.
somebody. Well, maybe I will one day.
All right.
Well, my book is mostly
Look.
pictures. Yeah, Zap.
Now,
Ray-
I bought this from you.
You did?
10 years
Oh,
ago.
you're the person.
When you had a show. Tell everybody what it's a book of. Nobody knows what we're talking about.
As a kid, I was a space cadet. I was really into space cadets and all that kind of a thing, and had a lot of ray guns. So I decided to collect vintage toy ray guns, and so I did.
It was before the internet. How did you find out all this stuff about them? How did you do all
I
this
used to
research?
go to antique shows all over the country. It was prior to the internet. That's right.
That's what I told somebody when you were coming on. I showed them this book. I said, this doesn't look like a lot to you now because you've got the internet. But
Yeah, you
before
can-
you had the internet,
You had to go. I found every one of those guns just like in an antique. I used to travel around the country looking for space toys. That was a hobby of mine. And my second book, which just came out last year, is called Do You Read Me? That one's called Zap. The Do You Read Me is a similar style book, mostly photographs, no real.
it's a coffee table book.
It's a coffee, yeah. And it's about vintage communication toys, like walkie-talkies, old that didn't work, just had string or wire, nothing that really broadcast. But basically, I love the look of it. You know, it's very kind of deco and retro-futuristic, and it's all about imagination. And that's kind of where my deal is from.
We've got a few minutes left. Let's do a Yiddish word vocabulary test.
Yeah, let's do that.
Dremel.
What?
Dremel.
Dremel is a little tool that you.
A little Dremel drip.
These are bonus rounds because they're hard. These are obscure words.
Dremel.
It's a nap.
A nap? Have you ever heard a nap called a
Yeah,
Dremel?
yeah. It just means it's a word for sleeping.
Malakay.
Geschliffen. Geschliffen. Go to
Schluffen is the actual word,
Schliffen. Go,
but I think Dremel.
that's what
means-
my grandma used to say to me, who also spoke Yiddish primarily, and who I used to understand. I used to listen to Yiddish comedy with her on the radio and could understand it. Yeah, she'd always say, Geschliffen.
So if I said to my father or to my mother, "There's nothing to do," and they would say, "Okay, Klopkoppenwand. Go hit your head against the wall."
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Give us another one. So,
All right. Let's see. Kashebol.
Kashabainishkas.
No. Here's one I can say. I can't say some of these. Malakay
No, you can't say it because I have no idea what that is.
Malakay?
means work.
Arbit
Malakay.
is work.
Just 1 hour of this Malakay and I get to head home.
Oh, it's probably like BS or something like that.
No, I've
So this means work?
never heard that.
Where did you get these
kinda
from?
looks
Off the internet. Here, Greg, you
looks like
find
off
one
the
off that
internet.
list.
This is fake news on the internet.
It kind of looks, from across the table, that kind of looks like something that sounds like malarkey, maybe?
It does sound like
Yeah,
malarkey, but it's
probably
not really. But
no.
but malarkey, I think, comes from that.
Let's see. Oh, mishpolka?
Yeah,
Mishpacha's family.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a popular word.
Minch. I feel like everybody knows
Mensch
what
is
that
a big word.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mensch, a man of or a woman of great honor.
I'm just reading the ones that I recognize. Mashugana.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what y'all are, Mashugana. There's your
are.
gift. We're about to leave.
Oh, thank you. What-
This is from
My
the
goodness.
Mashugana to Jewish guys.
That's very nice.
Look at that.
Phil, you get one
Oh,
too.
wow.
It's a desk set.
Oh, it
Thank
does
you.
say Excelsior.
I'll put this
What's
on
that
my
blue
desk.
one, I wonder?
This one.
What's
It
that
says
one?
The flag of New
Excelsior.
York, which
Flag of New York.
which really only meant to be for one of you, I think.
Yeah.
The other one's supposed to get Michigan. I mean, Massachusetts.
Well, thank you.
All right. I love seeing
This
you
was
guys.
a lot of fun, Kerry.
Come
Thank
back
you.
on there with me, will you?
How about next week?
Okay. Okay. Thanks again for joining me and my guests. For those listeners who might have a great entrepreneurial story they'd like to share, send a brief bio and your contact info to Kerry at flagandbanner.com and someone will be in touch. To all my listeners, thank you for spending time with us. We hope you've heard or learned something that's been inspiring or enlightening and that whatever it is, will help you up your business, your independence, or your life. I'm Kerry McCoy and I'll see you next time on Up in Your Business. And till then, be brave.
You've been listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy. For links to resources you heard discussed on today's show, go to flagandbanner.com, select radio, and choose today's guest. All interviews are recorded and posted the following week. Subscribe to podcasts wherever you like to listen. Kerry's goal is simple: to help you live the American dream.